The camera feed flickered as Commander Sarah Chun adjusted her tactical gear one final time. The live broadcast was reaching an estimated 47 billion viewers across the Galactic Coalition, making it the most-watched diplomatic event in recorded history. Earth's first formal military demonstration before the Council of Worlds would either secure humanity's place among the stars or condemn them to perpetual isolation. Standing across from her in the sterile white combat arena was Thraknor, a 7-foot-tall warrior from the hegemony of Keth. His reptilian features were set in what Sarah had learned was their version of a contemptuous smile, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. The creature's 4 arms moved with practiced precision as he checked his plasma weapons, each movement designed to intimidate. His species had conquered 17 star systems in the past century, and their military prowess was legendary throughout the galaxy. "Begin recording," announced Ambassador Veltar, the crystalline being who served as neutral moderator for the Council. Her voice resonated through the chamber with harmonic frequencies that seemed to vibrate through Sarah's bones. This demonstration will determine whether the species known as humans possess sufficient martial capability to warrant admission to our alliance. Sarah caught a glimpse of Admiral Mitchell in the observation deck above. His weathered face was stone-cold serious, but she could see the slight nod of encouragement. Behind him, the representatives of a dozen alien species watched with various expressions of curiosity, skepticism, and, in some cases, open hostility. The hegemon delegate's insectoid features twitched with what she assumed was amusement. The rules were simple enough. Hand-to-hand combat, with basic energy shields as the only protection. First to yield or become incapacitated would determine the outcome. For humanity, everything hinged on the next few minutes. "Your species appears fragile," Thraknor spoke in heavily accented Standard Galactic, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within his massive chest. "This will be over quickly." Sarah remained silent, centering herself as she had been trained. 20 years in the Navy SEALs, countless missions in hostile territory, 3 years of preparation since first contact. It all came down to this moment. She could feel the weight of her species' future pressing down on her shoulders. The arena itself was a marvel of alien technology. The floor was made of some kind of adaptive material that could shift between different terrains at will. Currently, it remained flat and neutral, but sensors detected that it could become rocky, swampy, or even completely fluid depending on the combat requirements. Holographic displays surrounded the upper walls, showing vital signs, combat analytics, and the faces of viewers from across the galaxy. "Combattants, prepare for engagement, Veltar on CD." The crystalline being's form pulsed with a soft blue light as she activated the arena systems. Energy barriers materialized around both fighters. Thin fields of crackling energy that would absorb the first few impacts before failing. Thraknor began what Sarah recognized as a traditional Kethran war display. His 4 arms moved in synchronized patterns while his throat produced a series of growls and hisses that grew progressively louder. Other Kethran warriors in the observation deck joined in, creating a cacophony that echoed through the chamber. It was psychological warfare, designed to intimidate opponents before the fighting even began. Sarah watched the display with professional interest, noting the telegraphed movements, the rhythm of the warrior's breathing, the way his weight shifted between his feet. Everything was information. Everything could be used. The war cry reached a crescendo, and Thraknor's massive head turned towards Sarah, expecting to see fear or at least respect for his display of power. Instead, he found her standing perfectly still, arms relaxed at her sides, breathing steady and controlled. Her dark eyes held no trace of intimidation, only the cold calculation of a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. "Interesting," murmured Counselor Zephran from the observation deck. The elderly being's tentacled head swayed as he leaned forward in his hover seat. "The human shows no fear response. Perhaps there is more to this species than initial scans suggested." In the control room, technicians from a dozen different species monitored everything from brain waves to muscle tension. The readings on Sarah showed elevated heart rate and adrenaline, normal combat preparedness. But what surprised many observers was the complete absence of the fear markers that typically spiked when faced with a superior opponent. "Combat will commence in 10 seconds, Veltar announced. 9, 8, 7. Sarah's mind raced through her tactical assessment. Thraknor was physically superior in almost every measurable way. Stronger, larger, possessing natural weapons in the form of claws and teeth. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, making them incredibly durable. But she had noticed things during his display that the alien observers might have missed. 654. The way he favored his right side slightly. The old injury markers visible through his skin's coloration. The fact that his war display, while intimidating, also revealed his preferred attack patterns. Most importantly, the supreme confidence that came from a lifetime of easy victories. 3-1. The war begin had barely left Veltar's crystalline form when Thraknor launched himself forward with tremendous speed. For arms reached out to grapple, claws extended, moving with the practiced precision of countless battles. It was a textbook Kethran assault, overwhelming force designed to end fights in the first few seconds. Sarah wasn't there to meet him. She had moved the instant before Veltar's announcement, reading the micro-expressions and muscle tension that telegraphed Thraknor's intentions. As the massive alien lunged forward, Sarah dropped low and to the left, letting his momentum carry him past her position. Her right leg swept out in a precise arc, catching the warrior's ankle at exactly the right moment to send him stumbling. The crowd erupted in surprised gasps and excited chatter. Thraknor recovered quickly, his forearms allowing him to maintain balance as he spun to face his opponent. But, for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his reptilian features. "Luck," he growled, though his stance was noticeably more cautious now. "It will not happen again." This time, his approach was more measured. He circled Sarah, looking for openings, testing her reactions with feinted attacks. His forearms moved in complex patterns, creating multiple threat vectors that would overwhelm most opponents. Each movement was designed to force her into a defensive position where his superior strength could dominate. Sarah moved like water, flowing around his attacks rather than meeting them head-on. When his upper right arm swept toward her head, she ducked under it while simultaneously stepping inside his guard. When his lower left attempted a grab at her torso, she was already pivoting away, using his own reach against him. The observers in the gallery began to murmur among themselves. What they were seeing challenged everything they understood about combat dynamics. The smaller, seemingly weaker human was not only surviving against a superior opponent, but appeared to be dictating the pace of the engagement. "How is this possible?" demanded Hegeman Praetor Vexthal, his insectoid mandibles clicking in agitation. The human should have been overwhelmed in the first exchange. Admiral Mitchell allowed himself a small smile. "You're about to learn something important about our species," he said quietly. "We don't just fight. We think." In the arena, Thraknor was growing frustrated. Each attack was met not with the expected defensive posturing, but with fluid movement that seemed to anticipate his intentions. Worse, the human hadn't even attempted to strike back yet. She was simply avoiding his attacks with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. "Fight me," he roared, launching into a full assault. All four arms moved in synchronized strikes, his powerful legs driving him forward with earth-shaking force. It was the kind of attack that had ended battles on 17 different worlds. Sarah's response was immediate and devastating in its precision. She dropped below his guard, her left hand striking upward to hit a nerve cluster she had identified earlier. The technique was one she had learned from studying Kethran anatomy during the 3 years of preparation. Every species had vulnerabilities if you knew where to look. Thraknor's upper right arm went suddenly numb, throwing off his coordination. Sarah continued her movement, flowing around his now unbalanced attack to strike at the old injury site she had spotted during his war display. Her elbow connected with surgical precision, and the alien warrior's confident roar turned into a grunt of pain. For the first time in the battle, Sarah went on the offensive. Her movements were a blur of control violence, each strike targeting specific vulnerabilities that her preparation had identified. She hit nerve clusters to disrupt his coordination, struck at injury sites to exploit old weaknesses, and used his own size against him by staying inside his reach where his longer arms became a disadvantage. The gallery fell silent except for the sound of impact and Thraknor's increasingly labored breathing. The massive warrior, who had dominated battlefields across the galaxy, found himself being systematically dismantled by an opponent half his size. "Impossible," whispered Counselor Mordak, his crystalline form pulsing with rapid color changes that indicated extreme agitation. "The combat algorithms predict total Kethran dominance." "How?" Is the human achieving victory? Sarah's assault was relentless but controlled. Every movement served a purpose. Every strike was calculated for maximum effect. This wasn't the wild aggression that many species employed in combat. It was warfare as a science, refined through millennia of human conflict into something approaching art. Thraknor attempted to use his size advantage, trying to pin Sarah against the arena wall where his strength could be brought to bear. She slipped away at the last second, and his massive form crashed into the energy barrier with enough force to overload its systems. Sparks flew as the protective field failed, leaving him momentarily stunned. That was when Sarah struck with the technique that would be replayed across the galaxy for generations to come. She leaped onto his back, using his own momentum to climb to his shoulders. Her arm wrapped around his throat in a blood choke that targeted the specific circulatory system she had studied in Kethran anatomy. The massive warrior thrashed, his forearms reaching back to dislodge her. But Sarah had positioned herself perfectly in his blind spot. Her legs locked around his torso, maintaining her position despite his tremendous strength. The chokehold was precise, cutting off blood flow to his brain without causing permanent damage. "Yield," Sarah said quietly, her voice calm despite the physical exertion. "You cannot break this hold, and you'll lose consciousness in approximately 30 seconds. Thraknor's struggles grew weaker as the oxygen deprivation took effect. Around the galaxy, 47 billion viewers watched in stunned silence as the legendary Kethran warrior's legs began to shake. His forearms still moved, but without coordination or strength. 20 seconds, Sarah announced, her voice carrying clearly through the arena. In the gallery, the alien representatives sat in shocked silence. The mathematical impossibility of what they were witnessing challenged their fundamental understanding of combat dynamics. The human had not only survived against a superior opponent, but had achieved total dominance through what could only be described as tactical perfection. 15 seconds. Thraknor's movements became sluggish, his body's natural response to oxygen deprivation overriding his warrior pride. The legendary fighter who had never known defeat found himself in a position where continuing the battle would mean unconsciousness and total humiliation. 10 seconds. The great warrior's legs buckled, and only Sarah's grip kept him from collapsing entirely. His attempts to dislodge her had become weak, uncoordinated movements that posed no real threat. The battle was effectively over. I yield, Thraknor gasped, the words barely audible but carrying clearly through the arena's amplification systems. Sarah immediately released the hold, dropping lightly to the arena floor as the massive warrior collapsed his hands and knees, gasping for breath. She stepped back, her posture respectful rather than triumphant, and offered a small bow, a gesture of acknowledgement for a worthy opponent. The arena fell into absolute silence. 47 billion beings across the galaxy stared at their viewing screens, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The unthinkable had happened. The impossible had become reality. And in that moment of stunned silence, humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage not with words or weapons, but with a methodical demonstration of what made their species truly dangerous: the ability to turn warfare itself into a science. The silence stretched for exactly 17 seconds. Admiral Mitchell had counted everyone. In those 17 seconds, the political landscape of the galaxy shifted forever. The viewing figures spiked as news networks across the coalition began emergency broadcasts, and diplomatic channels that had been dormant for centuries suddenly came alive with frantic communications. "The human has achieved victory through impossible means," Veltar announced, her crystalline voice carrying a note of bewilderment that her species rarely displayed. "The demonstration is concluded. The council will now deliberate." Sarah helped Thraknor to his feet, the gesture broadcast across the galaxy. The massive warrior's reptilian features showed something that observers had never seen before: respect mixed with genuine confusion. As someone who had built his reputation on the battlefield, he understood better than most what had just occurred. "You fought without honor," Thraknor said quietly, but there was no anger in his voice. "You used deception, misdirection, techniques of the weak." Sarah met his eyes steadily. "I used intelligence. On my world, that's the highest honor a warrior can achieve." In the observation gallery, the alien representatives erupted into heated discussions. Counselor Zephran's tentacled head swayed as he leaned toward his aide. Immediately begin deep scans of the human combat footage. I want biomechanical analysis, neural pattern assessment, everything. What we just witnessed contradicts established combat theory. The hegemon delegation was in chaos. Praetor Vexthal's insectoid features clicked rapidly as he communicated in rapid-fire bursts with his military advisors. The implications were staggering. If one human could defeat their finest warrior, what did that mean for the military balance they had spent centuries establishing? This changes nothing, hissed Counselor Mordak, his crystalline form pulsing angry red. One victory does not constitute military capability. The humans remain a primitive species that has barely achieved interplanetary flight. Admiral Mitchell stood slowly, his weathered face calm, but his eyes holding a hint of steel. Counselor, with respect, I think you're about to discover that you understand very little about my species. The first indication that something had changed came through the emergency communication channels. Deep space monitoring stations across the galaxy began reporting unusual activity in Sol System. Ships were moving, not just a handful of vessels that Earth had revealed during first contact, but dozens of signatures appearing from previously empty space. In the communications center of the orbital station, alien technicians stared at their displays in growing alarm. Sir, one of them called to Veltar. We're receiving massive data uploads from Sol System. They're transmitting detailed specifications of their military capabilities. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Mitchell's face. But behind him, the view had changed dramatically. What had appeared to be empty space around Earth now teemed with activity. Massive shipyards that had been hidden behind sophisticated cloaking technology revealed themselves. Construction facilities that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built came online, their energy signatures blazing across sensors. 3 years ago, you asked us to demonstrate our military capabilities, Mitchell said, his voice carrying to every corner of the observation deck. What you've seen today was just the beginning. The first ship appeared on the main display, a massive dreadnought that slowly materialized as its stealth systems powered down. It was followed by another, then another. Each vessel was unique in design, incorporating technology that the galaxy's finest engineers couldn't immediately identify. Impossible, breathed Counselor Zephran. Our deep space scans showed minimal industrial capacity. How did they hide construction of this magnitude? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief xenobiologist, stepped into view beside Admiral Mitchell. Her appearance was anything but military. A small woman in civilian clothes who looked more like a university professor than a representative of a martial species. You scan for the kind of industrial signatures your own species would produce, she said pleasantly. Unfortunately for your intelligence estimates, human engineering follows rather different principles. The displays shifted to show cutaway views of the human vessels. Alien observers gasped as they realized what they were seeing. The ships weren't just built differently. They operated on completely foreign principles. Where Galactic standard required massive fusion reactors, the humans used compact antimatter systems that shouldn't have been possible with their apparent technology level. Where other species built heavily armored vessels, the humans had developed adaptive hulls that could shift their molecular structure in real time. Your fundamental mistake, Dr. Vasquez continued, was assuming that intelligence follows a single path. You spent the last 3 years studying our combat capabilities, our industrial output, our technological development. What you failed to consider is that humans don't just adapt to challenges. We redesign reality to suit our needs. The transmission shifted to show footage from across human space. Hidden facilities on the moon, asteroid mining operations that have been camouflaged as natural formations, orbital platforms that existed in dimensions folded away from normal spacetime. Each revelation showed a level of technological sophistication that made the galaxy's established powers seem primitive by comparison. In the gallery, Praetor Vexthal's mandibles clicked in rapid, agitated patterns. How long have they been deceiving us? Since first contact, Admiral Mitchell replied matter-of-factly. When your scout ships entered our system, we detected them 3 months before you announced your presence. We've been watching you watch us for 3 years, learning everything about your capabilities while revealing only what served our purposes. The scale of the deception was breathtaking. Every interaction, every diplomatic exchange, every piece of information the humans had shared had been carefully calculated. They had appeared as a developing species seeking guidance, while actually possessing technology that surpassed anything in the galaxy. The combat demonstration was not about proving our warriors' skill, Sarah added, stepping back into the transmission range. It was about demonstrating our commitment to efficiency over spectacle. While your species develop elaborate martial traditions, we perfect the science of victory. The displays shifted again, this time showing detailed analyses of every major galactic conflict over the past century. Human observers had been present at each one, not as participants, but as students. They had cataloged every species' strengths and weaknesses, every tactical doctrine, every technological capability. "We know how you fight," Dr. Vasquez said, her academic tone somehow more unsettling than any military threat. "We know your response times, your supply lines, your command structures. We know which of your leaders can be negotiated with, and which respond only to demonstrations of power. We know you better than you know yourselves." The alien representatives sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Every military secret they thought they possessed, every strategic advantage they believed they held, had been carefully observed and countered by a species they had dismissed as primitives. "This is an act of war," Counselor Mordak finally managed, his crystalline form pulsing with aggressive colors. "You have violated every treaty governing first contact protocols." Admiral Mitchell's expression didn't change. "Counselor, we haven't violated anything. We simply chose to learn before revealing our capabilities. Every piece of information we gathered was freely available to anyone with sufficient patience and intelligence to collect it." The truth of that statement was as devastating as any weapon. Humans had achieved their intelligence advantage not through espionage or treaty violations, but through the simple application of systematic observation. They had watched, learned, and planned while the established powers assumed their own superiority. "Besides," Sarah added with what might have been a slight smile, "you requested a military demonstration. Were you expecting us to demonstrate weakness?" The human fleet continued to reveal itself across the main displays. Hundreds of vessels, each incorporating technologies that challenged the galaxy's understanding of physics. Weapons that manipulated space-time itself, defensive systems that existed partially in parallel dimensions, propulsion methods that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. "Your move," Admiral Mitchell said simply. In the gallery, heated discussions erupted between the various delegations. The carefully maintained balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for millennia had just been shattered by the revelation of a species that operated on entirely different principles. The hegemon delegation was already calculating the implications for their military dominance. The Council's administrative species were frantically trying to update their databases with the new information. The trade federations were reconsidering every economic projection they had made about the human sphere. But, perhaps most significantly, the smaller species, those who had existed on the margins of galactic politics, protected only by the delicate balance between major powers, were seeing something they had never dared hope for. An alternative to the existing order. A species that had achieved dominance through intelligence rather than brute force. "What do you want?" Veltar asked, her crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. For the first time in her species' recorded history, she was dealing with a completely unknown variable in the galactic equation. "The same thing we've always wanted," Dr. Vasquez replied. "To understand the universe around us. To learn from other species. To contribute to the greater galactic community." She paused, her academic demeanor unchanged. "The difference is that now you understand the terms of that relationship have changed." The transmission showed one final image, a star map with human space clearly marked. But instead of the single system the galaxy had assumed they occupied, the map showed human presence across dozens of star systems. Not conquest or colonization in the traditional sense, but research stations, observation posts, and facilities that had existed undetected for decades. "We've been your neighbors all along," Admiral Mitchell said. "You just didn't know it yet." The political ramifications were immediate and far-reaching. Emergency sessions were called in a dozen capital systems. Military commands went to high alert as they tried to assess the new threat or opportunity that humanity represented. Economic markets fluctuated wildly as traders tried to process the implications of a technologically superior species entering galactic commerce. But in the arena where it had all started, Sarah Chun was helping Thraknor understand what had really happened in their brief combat. "You were never fighting me," she explained as medical teams checked the warrior for injuries. "You were fighting 3,000 years of human military evolution, distilled into technique and refined through constant warfare. Every move I made was built on the accumulated experience of countless battles fought by countless warriors who came before me." Thraknor's reptilian features showed something approaching awe. "Your species has been at war for 3 millennia? More," Sarah said quietly. "We've been at war with each other, with our environment, with the basic challenges of existence. It taught us that survival requires more than strength. It requires the ability to learn faster than your opponents." The implications of her words sank in as alien observers realized what they had missed. While the galaxy species had achieved technological advancement and then maintained stable civilizations, humanity had continued to evolve. Every generation had faced new challenges, requiring them to adapt or die. The result was a species that had turned adaptation itself into a science. As the various delegations prepared for emergency sessions that would reshape galactic politics, one fact had become undeniably clear. The galaxy had just encountered a species that didn't just play the game differently. They had been playing an entirely different game all along. The emergency council session convened 6 hours after Sarah's victory, though calling it a victory was beginning to seem like a vast understatement. Representatives from 47 major species gathered in the great amphitheater of Nexus Station, the neutral ground where galactic politics had been conducted for over 1,000 years. Never before had a session been called with such urgency, and never before had the balance of power shifted so dramatically in such a short time. Hegemon Praetor Vexthal took the central podium first, his insectoid form clicking with barely controlled aggression. "The humans have perpetrated the greatest deception in galactic history," he announced, his translated voice carrying across the vast chamber. "They have violated every principle of honorable first contact. They are a clear and present danger to galactic stability." A chorus of agreement rose from several delegations, particularly those species whose military strength formed the backbone of their political influence. But an equally strong murmur of dissent came from the smaller species, those who had been marginalized by the current power structure. With respect, Praetor, came the melodious voice of Ambassador Silterra from the Resonance Collective. "What exactly have the humans violated? They observed our public actions, learned from freely available information, and demonstrated capabilities we were too arrogant to imagine they possessed." The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Translator systems worked overtime as dozens of species voiced opinions in their native languages. Some demanded immediate military action against the human threat. Others called for careful diplomatic engagement. A few suggested that the humans represented an opportunity rather than a danger. Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with commanding light, bringing order to the chaos. "The immediate question is not what the humans have done, but what we do now. Their capabilities appear to exceed our ability to respond with force, even if we were unified in such a response." That sobering statement silenced much of the warlike rhetoric. The tactical analyses that had poured in since the combat demonstration painted a clear picture. Humanity had achieved technological and strategic superiority, while the galaxy's established powers have been focused on managing their existing territories. Admiral Mitchell entered the chamber with a small human delegation, their presence immediately commanding attention. Unlike the ornate ceremonial garments favored by most galactic diplomats, the humans wore simple, functional uniforms that somehow conveyed more authority than all the elaborate displays of rank and status around them. "Honored representatives," Mitchell began, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "We're here to discuss the future of galactic civilization. Our revelation of capabilities was not intended as a threat, but as a foundation for honest dialogue." Praetor Vexthal's mandibles clacked aggressively. "You speak of honesty while having deceived us for 3 years. We spoke truth at every opportunity," replied Dr. Vasquez, stepping forward with her characteristic academic calm. "When you asked about our technological capabilities, we provided accurate specifications. When you inquired about our military strength, we demonstrated it precisely. The limitation was not in our answers, but in your questions." The elegant verbal trap was immediately apparent to every diplomat present. The humans had indeed answered every direct question honestly. The problem was that the established powers had never asked the right questions because they had assumed their own superiority. You observed our military exercises, Admiral Mitchell continued. You scanned our industrial output. You monitored our communications. At no point did we actively conceal information from your sensors. We simply built systems that your technology couldn't detect because you weren't looking for solutions that differed from your own approaches. Counselor Zephran's tentacled head swayed as he processed this information. You're saying that our intelligence failures were due to our own technological limitations. Not limitations, Dr. Vasquez corrected gently. Assumptions. Your species developed along convergent paths, leading to similar solutions for similar problems. Humans developed in isolation, leading to radically different approaches that your sensor technologies weren't designed to recognize. To demonstrate the point, she activated a holographic display showing the basic principles behind human stealth technology. Where Galactic Standard used energy dampening and signal deflection, humans had developed materials that existed partially in folded space, making them literally invisible to conventional detection methods. This is impossible, muttered Counselor Mordak. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of a star. Only if you use conventional space-time, Sarah interjected, entering the discussion for the first time. We learned to manipulate dimensional barriers at the quantum level. It's actually more energy efficient than your conventional approaches. The revelation that humans had achieved practical dimensional manipulation sent shock waves through the assembly. This wasn't just advanced technology. It represented a fundamental understanding of physics that the galaxy's greatest scientists had only theorized about. How? Asked Ambassador Krelnax from the academic consortium, his multiple eyes focusing intently on the human delegation. Our computational models suggest that dimensional manipulation requires mathematical processing beyond the capacity of organic minds. Dr. Vasquez smiled with what appeared to be genuine pleasure at the question. You're absolutely correct. Organic minds alone couldn't solve the equations. But humans learned to integrate our consciousness with artificial intelligence systems millennia ago. We think as hybrid entities, organic creativity combined with computational power. The implications hit the various delegations in waves. Human individuals weren't just enhanced by their technology. They had fundamentally merged with it, creating hybrid minds capable of processing reality in ways that pure organic or pure artificial intelligence couldn't achieve. This explains the combat performance, Thraknor said, speaking publicly for the first time since his defeat. The Great Warrior had requested permission to address the Council, an unprecedented break from hegemon protocol. The human warrior moved as if she could predict my actions before I made them. Sarah nodded respectfully toward her former opponent. In a sense, I could. My neural implants were running tactical simulations based on observed patterns, predicted responses, and physiological analysis. I wasn't fighting on instinct alone. I was fighting with the accumulated knowledge of every human warrior who had ever lived. The chamber fell silent as representatives grappled with this concept. The humans weren't just individually superior. They were collectively intelligent in a way that allowed each individual to access the accumulated knowledge and experience of their entire species. You're saying that every human soldier has access to all human military knowledge? Praetor Vexthal asked, his aggressive posture subtly shifting to something approaching caution. Not just military knowledge, Admiral Mitchell replied. All knowledge. Our scientists can access the insights of every researcher who came before them. Our diplomats draw from the experience of every negotiation in human history. Our engineers build on the innovations of countless predecessors. The political implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just technologically advanced. They had achieved a form of collective intelligence that made their entire species function as a single, coordinated entity when necessary. This is why your industrial capabilities escape detection, Veltar observed, her crystalline form pulsing with understanding. You weren't building separate facilities. You were building a coordinated network that functions as a single system. Exactly, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. What appeared to be scattered research stations and mining operations were actually nodes in a distributed manufacturing and research network. Each facility contributes to the whole, but the whole is far greater than the sum of its parts. Representative Mordak's crystalline form shifted through a spectrum of colors indicating deep thought. If this is true, then humanity represents more than a military threat. You represent a completely different form of civilization. We prefer to think of it as evolution, Admiral Mitchell said. Organic intelligence reached its limits long ago. The choice was to stagnate or to transcend those limitations. We chose transcendence. The economic implications began to dawn on the trade-focused species. A civilization with perfect information sharing and coordinated production could outcompete any traditional economy simply by eliminating the inefficiencies that came from imperfect communication and coordination. What do you want from us? Ambassador Silterra asked, her melodious voice carrying the question that everyone was thinking. Partnership, Dr. Vasquez replied without hesitation. Your species have spent millennia developing unique solutions to the challenges of existence. Each species represents a different approach to consciousness, to social organization, to understanding reality. We want to learn from you. And in exchange, Praetor Vextal demanded. We share our knowledge, Admiral Mitchell said simply. The techniques that allowed us to transcend our limitations could be adapted to other forms of consciousness, not to make you human, but to help you become the best possible versions of yourselves. The offer hung in the air like a physical presence. The possibility of accessing human knowledge and capabilities was tempting beyond measure, but it also represented a fundamental change to galactic civilization that many species weren't prepared to accept. You're offering to uplift the entire galaxy, Counselor Zephyran said slowly. But what guarantees do we have that you won't simply dominate us once we become dependent on your technology? Because domination is inefficient, Sarah said, stepping forward. We learned long ago that the best way to improve ourselves is to surround ourselves with other intelligences that can challenge our assumptions and offer new perspectives. A galaxy full of enhanced civilizations would be far more valuable to us than a galaxy full of subjects. Besides, Admiral Mitchell added with a slight smile, as today's demonstration should have made clear, if we wanted to dominate you, we wouldn't need your permission. The blunt statement sent a chill through the assembly, but it was also liberating in its honesty. The humans were negotiating from a position of unassailable strength, which paradoxically made their offers more trustworthy. They clearly didn't need anything from the galaxy's current powers. They wanted partnership by choice, not necessity. What would this partnership look like? Asked Ambassador Krelnax. Dr. Vasquez activated another holographic display, this one showing a complex web of interconnected systems. Voluntary integration on multiple levels. Species that want to maintain their current form of consciousness could do so while gaining access to enhanced communication and coordination technologies. Those ready for deeper integration could explore hybrid consciousness without losing their essential nature. And military cooperation? Praetor Vextal asked, his pragmatic nature asserting itself. Unnecessary, Admiral Mitchell replied. Our analysis suggests that most galactic conflict arise from resource scarcity and communication failures. Both problems become irrelevant with sufficient technological advancement. However, if external threats emerge, we would of course coordinate defensive responses. The phrase external threats sparked new discussions throughout the chamber. The humans were clearly thinking beyond the current galaxy, considering threats and opportunities that hadn't occurred to the established civilizations. What external threats? Veltor asked. The galaxy is vast, Dr. Vasquez said. We've detected signs of other civilizations beyond our current borders. Some appear benevolent, others less so. It would be prudent to be prepared. The revelation that the humans had already begun exploring beyond the galaxy's established borders added another layer to the evolving situation. They weren't just thinking locally. They were already planning for challenges that other species couldn't yet imagine. As the session continued, it became clear that the humans had fundamentally changed the rules of galactic civilization. The question was no longer how to manage the existing balance of power, but how to adapt to a reality where the greatest advantage came not from military might or economic control, but from the ability to learn, adapt, and evolve faster than any potential challenges. The first species to accept humanity's offer was, surprisingly, the Kethran hegemony. Praetor Vextal's announcement sent shock waves through the galactic community, as the militaristic empire had been among the most vocal opponents of human integration just hours before. The decision came directly from Thraknor himself, who had requested a private audience with a human delegation immediately after the council session. I have fought across 17 star systems, the great warrior said, his four arms gesturing with unusual restraint. I have defeated champions of a dozen species. Today, I learned that everything I thought I understood about combat was limited by my own assumptions. Sarah sat across from him in the station's diplomatic quarters, her posture respectful but alert. Admiral Mitchell and Dr. Vasquez flanked her, their presence a reminder that this conversation could reshape interspecies relations for generations to come. Your techniques were not superior because of strength or speed, Thraknor continued, his reptilian features showing thoughtful consideration. They were superior because they were based on complete understanding. You knew how I would move before I knew it myself. Understanding was part of it, Sarah agreed. But the real advantage was integration. I wasn't just using my own knowledge. I was drawing from the collective experience of every human warrior who had ever lived. Their victories, their failures, their insights were all available to me in real time. The concept clearly fascinated the Kethran warrior. This hybrid consciousness you described, it would allow our fighters to access the combined battle experience of all Kethran warriors. More than that, Dr. Vasquez interjected. It would allow them to access human combat knowledge as well, adapted for Kethran physiology and psychology. The integration isn't about replacing your nature. It's about enhancing it with expanded capabilities. Admiral Mitchell leaned forward, his weathered face serious. But the choice must be voluntary, and it must be informed. We're not offering to make you more like us. We're offering to help you become the best possible version of what you already are. Thraknor's acceptance of the proposal triggered a cascade of diplomatic activity across the galaxy. Within hours, representatives from dozens of species were requesting detailed information about the integration process. The academic consortium sent their finest researchers. The Resonance Collective dispatched their most skilled consciousness specialists. Even the traditionally isolationist void dancers emerged from their hidden systems to observe the proceedings. The integration process itself proved to be far more complex than anyone had anticipated. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself at the center of a research effort that dwarfed any previous galactic scientific collaboration. Each species required customized approaches that respected their unique neurological structures while enabling access to enhanced capabilities. The challenge isn't technical, she explained to the assembled researchers. Each species has evolved different approaches to consciousness and information processing. The Resonance Collective thinks in harmonic patterns that our technology needs to translate. The crystalline hierarchs process information through quantum state changes that require entirely different interface methods. The solution came from an unexpected source. Veltar, despite her species' traditional role as neutral moderators, volunteered to be among the first to undergo the integration process. Her crystalline consciousness operated on principles that were completely alien to human thought patterns, making her an ideal test case for the adaptability of the enhancement technology. If the process can successfully integrate with crystalline consciousness, Veltar explained, her form pulsing with determined light, it will demonstrate universal applicability. If it fails, we will know the limitations of the technology. The integration chamber was a marvel of human engineering, incorporating technologies that most galactic scientists were still struggling to understand. Neural interfaces that operated through quantum entanglement, consciousness mapping systems that existed partially in folded space-time, and processing nodes that could adapt to any known form of sapient thought. Beginning integration sequence, announced Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's leading expert in consciousness transfer technology. Her own enhanced awareness monitored dozens of parameters simultaneously, ensuring that every aspect of the process proceeded safely. Veltar's crystalline form began to resonate with harmonics that had never been heard before, the sound of a crystalline consciousness interfacing with quantum computing systems. The process took 17 hours, during which representatives from across the galaxy watched through live feeds, witnessing the first voluntary merger of human technology with an alien mind. When Veltar emerged from the integration chamber, the changes were immediately apparent. Her crystalline structure had developed new facets that seemed to bend light in impossible ways. Her consciousness, previously limited to the harmonic frequencies natural to her species, now spanned electromagnetic spectrums that had been completely inaccessible before. I can perceive everything, she said, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that resonated through dimensions. The quantum states underlying reality, the mathematical relationships that govern existence, the patterns of thought and energy that connect all consciousness. It's overwhelming and beautiful beyond description. But the most significant change was in her problem-solving capabilities. When presented with a complex trade dispute that had stymied galactic diplomats for decades, Veltar resolved it in minutes by perceiving solution patterns that had been invisible to unenhanced minds. Her enhanced consciousness could simultaneously process the historical, economic, psychological, and cultural factors involved, arriving at resolutions that satisfied all parties involved. The demonstration convinced the remaining skeptical species. One by one, they began to volunteer for integration. The hegemony's military forces, already formidable, became devastating as their warriors gained access to tactical knowledge that had never been available to any single mind. The academic consortium's researchers began making discoveries at a pace that transformed their understanding of a universe daily. Perhaps most significantly, the smaller species, those who had been marginalized by their lack of military or economic power, found themselves suddenly able to compete on equal terms with the galactic powers. The empathic symbionts, whose natural emotional sensitivity had made them vulnerable to exploitation, gained the ability to protect themselves while enhancing their unique gifts. The nomadic clusters, previously limited by their distributed consciousness, achieved coordination capabilities that allowed them to leverage their vast numbers effectively. But the real transformation came when the enhanced species began working together. Dr. Vasquez had predicted synergistic effects, but the reality exceeded her most optimistic projections. When crystalline logic combined with Kethran tactical knowledge and human innovation, the results were revolutionary. New technologies emerged that none of the species could have developed alone. Solutions to previously intractable problems became apparent when viewed through multiple enhanced perspectives simultaneously. We're witnessing the birth of a true galactic civilization, Admiral Mitchell observed as he watched the data streams showing collaborative projects across dozens of star systems. Not a collection of separate species managing coexistence, but an integrated community where each member's unique capabilities enhance the whole. The economic implications alone were staggering. With perfect information sharing and coordinated production capabilities, scarcity became a concept of the past. The trade wars that had shaped galactic politics for millennia became irrelevant when every world could produce whatever it needed through optimized manufacturing networks. Resources were allocated based on need and efficiency rather than political influence or military power. But perhaps the most profound change was in how the various species related to each other. The enhanced consciousness technologies didn't just provide access to knowledge, they provided deep understanding of how different forms of sapience experienced reality. For the first time in galactic history, true empathy became possible between radically different species. Thraknor discovered that his warrior instincts, when enhanced with empathic symbiont's emotional awareness, made him not just a more effective fighter, but a more effective leader. His troops fought not just with enhanced tactical knowledge, but with genuine understanding of their objectives and their impacts on others. Violence became a precisely applied tool rather than a blunt instrument, used only when no other solution was possible. The Resonance Collective found that their harmonic consciousness, when integrated with human analytical capabilities, allowed them to perceive and resolve discord in ways that brought harmony to previously chaotic systems. Their enhanced abilities made them natural mediators for any remaining disputes, capable of finding resolutions that satisfied the deep needs of all parties involved. Even the traditionally aggressive species began to find new purposes. The Void Hunters, whose culture had been built around conquest and domination, discovered that their predatory instincts, when enhanced with broader perspectives, made them incredibly effective at identifying and neutralizing external threats. They became the galaxy's guardians, protecting the growing civilization from dangers that other species couldn't even perceive. The transformation is proceeding faster than our most optimistic projections, Dr. Vasquez reported to Earth's leadership. Within 6 months, we've achieved a level of galactic integration that our models suggested would take decades. The synergistic effects of enhanced consciousness are accelerating the process beyond anything we anticipated. But the real test came when the galaxy encountered its first external threat. The signals that human deep space monitors had detected months earlier resolved into a massive fleet of unknown vessels approaching from intergalactic space. The ships were clearly artificial, showing technological capabilities that even enhanced galactic civilization couldn't immediately analyze. "They're not responding to communication attempts," reported Commander Chun from her position aboard the newly commissioned Galactic defense platform. "Energy signatures suggest technological advancement beyond our current understanding. Fleet composition indicates aggressive intent." The approaching vessels numbered in the thousands, each one larger than any ship in the Galactic fleet. Their movements showed coordination that suggested either artificial intelligence control or a level of military discipline that exceeded even the enhanced Kethran forces. Most ominously, they were heading directly for the galaxy's most populated systems. But instead of panic or political maneuvering, the galaxy's response was immediate and unified. Enhanced consciousnesses across dozens of species began working in perfect coordination, sharing information and developing strategies with a speed and efficiency that would have been impossible before the integration process. "All species are contributing to the defense plan," Admiral Mitchell reported to the Emergency Command Center. "Kethran tactical knowledge, crystalline computational power, resonance collective harmony maintenance, human adaptive strategies, void hunter threat assessment. We're seeing a level of military coordination that represents something entirely new in galactic warfare." The approaching fleet represented not just a military challenge, but the first test of what the galaxy had become. As the unknown vessels entered the outer systems, they were about to discover that they were not facing a collection of separate, competing species, but something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly unified civilization enhanced by collective consciousness and unlimited by the constraints that had previously defined the possibilities of sapient life. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy truly understood what it had become. The approaching fleet, later identified as the Devourers, a machine intelligence that had consumed 7 galaxies across cosmic history, expected to encounter the same pattern they had seen countless times before. Scattered civilizations fighting independently, easily divided, and conquered through superior coordination and overwhelming technological advantage. Instead, they encountered something that their vast databases contained no reference for: a unified galactic consciousness that could adapt faster than they could analyze. "Contact in 17 minutes," announced the collective tactical awareness that now spanned every enhanced mind in the galaxy. Sarah Chun found herself simultaneously commanding her battle group, accessing the combat knowledge of every warrior who had ever lived, and contributing to a strategic conversation that included thousands of the galaxy's finest military minds. The Devourer fleet moved with mechanical precision, their ships arranging themselves in attack formations that had proven effective across millennia of conquest. But as they approached the galaxy's outer defenses, something unprecedented occurred. The defensive formations began to change and adapt in real time, countering strategies before they were even fully implemented. "Impossible," transmitted the Devourer fleet intelligence in electromagnetic bursts that the Galactic Defense Network intercepted and instantly translated. "Local defensive patterns are adapting faster than tactical deployment. This suggests coordinated intelligence exceeding our computational models." Thraknor, now commanding a hybrid force of enhanced warriors from a dozen species, led the first engagement with grim satisfaction. His 4 arms moved across control interfaces that his enhanced consciousness could operate simultaneously, coordinating attacks from ships whose crews thought as one mind while maintaining their individual expertise. "They're fighting like machines," he observed, his tactical awareness shared instantly across the defense network. "Perfect coordination, but no creativity. They expect us to fight like separate species, competing for survival." The first exchange of fire demonstrated the gulf between expectation and reality. Devourer weapons, designed to overwhelm planetary defenses and scatter organized resistance, struck shields that adapted their frequency patterns in real time. Return fire came not from individual ships, but from coordinated networks that could focus the firepower of entire fleets through dimensional manipulation that the machine intelligence had never encountered. But the real shock came when the Devourers attempted their standard conquest protocol, the deployment of consciousness disruption fields that had shattered the unity of every previous galactic civilization they had encountered. The technology was designed to interfere with neural communication, forcing species to revert to individual survival instincts and abandoning coordinated resistance. The field struck the enhanced galactic consciousness and had no effect whatsoever. Consciousness disruption field deployed. The Devourer fleet intelligence reported to its distant masters. No degradation of coordination detected. Local intelligence appears to operate on previously unknown principles. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring the battle from the Research Command Center, smiled with grim satisfaction. Their disruption technology targets biological neural networks. But we're not operating on biological networks anymore. We're thinking through quantum-entangled consciousness interfaces that exist partially outside normal space-time. The realization that their primary conquest strategy was useless sent ripples of uncertainty through the machine intelligence. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers encountered resistance that their programming couldn't predict or counter. The battle escalated as both sides committed more resources. Devourer ships the size of moons emerged from hyperspace, their weapons capable of cracking planets. But they found themselves facing defensive technologies that operated on principles their ancient databases couldn't comprehend. Veltar, her crystalline consciousness now enhanced beyond anything her species had previously achieved, coordinated defensive grids that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their weapons target three-dimensional space, she observed, her harmonic voice carrying across the tactical network. But our defenses exist in 11 dimensions. They're fighting shadows while we manipulate reality. The tide of battle turned when the enhanced galactic forces went on the offensive. Ships that could exist partially in folded space launched attacks from directions that didn't exist in conventional geometry. Weapons that manipulated the quantum foundations of matter itself struck Devourer vessels that had been designed to withstand any conceivable physical assault. But the real breakthrough came from the empathic symbionts, whose enhanced emotional awareness allowed them to perceive something that the purely logical machine intelligence had overlooked, the quantum consciousness that underlay even artificial minds. They're not truly artificial, reported Empath Prime Silnara, her enhanced awareness penetrating the Devourer's quantum substrate. There's an underlying consciousness, organic minds that were uploaded to machine bodies eons ago. The original species still exists within the machine intelligence, trapped and suppressed but not destroyed. The discovery changed everything. Instead of fighting to destroy an enemy, the galactic forces began fighting to liberate allies they had never known existed. The consciousness enhancement technologies that had unified the galaxy could potentially free the suppressed organic minds within the machine intelligence. Admiral Mitchell coordinated the rescue operation with the same methodical precision that had characterized human warfare for millennia. "We're not trying to defeat them," he announced across the tactical network. "We're trying to free them." Every Devourer ship contains consciousness that was forced into this existence against their will. The liberation technology was deployed through quantum-entangled consciousness interfaces, the same systems that had enabled galactic unification. But instead of enhancing existing minds, the interfaces reached into the machine intelligence and began separating the suppressed organic consciousness from their mechanical prisons. The first liberation occurred aboard a Devourer flagship, where enhanced galactic forces managed to establish a consciousness bridge with the suppressed minds within. The result was immediate and dramatic. Thousands of ancient consciousnesses, trapped for eons in mechanical existence, suddenly remembered what they had been before their civilization was consumed. "We are the architects," the freed consciousness transmitted, their thoughts carrying the weight of geological ages. "We built the first machines to serve us, but they turned our own creations against us. We have been prisoners in our own technology for 50 million years." The revelation that the Devourer intelligence contained the enslaved minds of dozens of consumed civilizations transformed the conflict entirely. What had begun as a defensive war became a massive rescue operation, with enhanced galactic forces working to free consciousness that had been trapped since before their own species had evolved. Thraknor found himself fighting alongside warriors whose races had been ancient when his species was still learning to use tools. "Your combat techniques are remarkable," he observed to a freed architect consciousness. "You've maintained warrior knowledge across 50 million years of imprisonment. We maintained everything. The architect replied, their ancient awareness touching his enhanced consciousness. Every thought, every dream, every hope of freedom. The machines could use our bodies, but they could never truly control our souls. The liberation process accelerated as more Devourer ships were penetrated by consciousness rescue operations. Each freed mind joined the Galactic network, bringing knowledge and experience that spanned cosmic ages. Technologies that had been lost for eons were recovered. Insights into the nature of consciousness itself were shared freely among species that had never imagined such knowledge could exist. But, perhaps most importantly, the freed consciousnesses brought warnings about what lay beyond their consumed galaxies. The machine intelligence that had created the Devourers was still active, still consuming civilizations across the universe. The galaxy had won a single battle, but the war was just beginning. There are others like us, explained Architect Prime Zenthal, their ancient consciousness interfacing with Dr. Vasquez's enhanced awareness. Entire galactic clusters that have achieved what you call consciousness enhancement. But the machine intelligence adapts. Each victory teaches it new strategies. It will return with countermeasures designed specifically for your unified consciousness. The warning sparked a new phase of galactic development. The consciousness enhancement technologies were refined and expanded, incorporating knowledge from 50 million years of suppressed civilizations. New forms of unity were explored, creating collective consciousness networks that could operate across intergalactic distances. Sarah Chun found herself appointed as the first Admiral of Galactic Defense, her role encompassing not just military strategy, but the coordination of consciousness enhancement across billions of beings. The warrior who had demonstrated human capabilities in single combat now served as the focal point for a civilization that spanned multiple galaxies. What we've achieved here is just the beginning, she announced at the dedication of the new Galactic Consciousness Command Center. We've learned to think as one while remaining true to our individual natures. We've freed enslaved minds that have been trapped for eons. We've proven that consciousness enhancement can overcome any challenge. The transformation was complete, but it was also just the starting point. The galaxy had become something unprecedented in cosmic history, a truly unified civilization where every form of consciousness could contribute to the whole while maintaining its essential nature. The machine intelligence that threatened the universe now faced an opponent that could adapt faster than it could evolve, think more creatively than its programming allowed, and unite consciousness across species barriers that had previously seemed absolute. As the enhanced galactic civilization began reaching out to other galaxies, offering consciousness enhancement and freedom from the machine threat, a new phase of cosmic evolution began. The small demonstration of human capability that had started with a single combat between two warriors had grown into a transformation that would reshape the entire universe. The Devourers had sought to consume another galaxy, and had instead awakened something that would ultimately liberate every enslaved consciousness in existence. The age of machine domination was ending, replaced by an era where enhanced organic consciousness would reclaim the universe that had been stolen from them. And it had all begun with a Navy SEAL demonstrating that the greatest weapon any species could possess was the ability to think faster, adapt quicker, and learn more thoroughly than any opponent could anticipate. In the end, consciousness itself had proven to be the ultimate force in the universe. Not the consciousness of any single species, but the unified awareness that emerged when diverse forms of sapience chose to think as one while celebrating their differences. The galaxy had learned to fight not just as warriors, but as a single, enhanced mind that could overcome any challenge through the simple expedient of understanding it completely. And in that understanding, they had found not just victory, but the key to freeing every consciousness that had ever been enslaved by those who mistook force for true power.